Okay, well, we are here today to do a little video on the role of the judge in court, and we'll share that with you in our discussions. Understand my background a little bit. I was a juvenile referee for some years a while back, and that is a kind of a judicial role. You kind of serve as an assistant to the judge. And then also from time to time I was a temporary judge and sat in for a judge on vacation, things like that. A judge, first of all I want to talk about how does a judge get elected. Judges get elected based upon a number of different types of processes around the United States. First of all, in the federal courts, the judges are appointed. They are picked by the president and then they are approved by the Congress. Now the problem that we get into that, it's all too often a very political process. People get hung up in committees and things like that. So it can be very difficult depending on the circumstances. If you're even a little bit controversial, you're not going to probably be selected. Another thing is that on the state level even, there are different ways that judges are elected. There is what we call the Missouri plan. And I'm going to kind of contrast this a little bit. Traditionally, judges stood for election just like anybody else. You know, the mayor, constables, the sheriff. Everybody had to run for election, and they ran on a party basis. Now, keep in mind that when the Constitution was written, political parties did not exist, and really nobody even considered that as a possibility. Political parties arose years after the Constitution was approved. In fact, George Washington was opposed to political parties. But anyway, judges would run as a politician just like all the other politicians, and the downside of that, people said, you know, they felt that this was kind of a corrupt process, and so some states have taken steps, and Missouri is one of them. Under, the true Missouri plan, judges are appointed, and they're appointed by the governor, and they're approved by the legislator, and then they serve one term. And in the course of that term, then they kind of develop a track record. How did they do? Were they fair? Were they just? Were they hard on criminals? All these different things. And then what ended up happening was that the voters have the right to say just yes or no. Was Mr. Jones a good judge? Yes or no. There's nobody running against him or anything like that. It's just the judge has to run on a ticket of, his track record. Was he a good judge? Yes or no. If the voters come back and say no, then he's out. He's not a judge any longer. So what happens? Well, the governor picks another judge, the legislature approves it, and so the whole thing kind of goes on and on. Now in Indiana, it's really kind of weird because judges are appointed by the governor. Like, let's say a judge dies while he's in office, and so the governor appoints a judge in a certain county. Well, if that governor is a Democrat and he wants to put a judge into a certain county, he can do that, but it may not work out because the county could be totally Republican, for example, and he's a Democrat, puts a Democrat judge in there, and it doesn't matter what they do, they're not going to go for it. So at the end of that first term, you have to run as a politician, and if the tendency of your county is to go the opposite party, even though you were appointed by the governor, which is a great honor, you're not going to last in that job. So issue becomes, just how practical is it to do this politicking in the judiciary. So Ohio has adopted another plan, which I think is a good plan, and that is what they call an apolitical plan. And so judges run against each other. So in other words, a candidate for judge can run against a sitting judge in every county around the state. But there's no politics involved, wink, wink. But basically what it is you can't run as a Republican or a Democrat. You just run as a candidate. No partisan politics in running for judge. Now, someone's been a Republican their whole life. Well, the word spreads on that in these counties, so it's really not that effective. But on the other hand, it's at least maybe better than this hardcore politics for judges. You know, politics shouldn't really have a role with judges. You know, the question is, you know, are they fair? Are they just? And the problem too often we get into is kind of like a popularity contest. Well, moving on, keep in mind that if once a person is elected judge, their role in the courtroom can kind of be different depending on the circumstances. There are some cases where the judge also sits as a jury. But in most cases, if there is a jury, just like in this Zimmerman case, the judge is to sit and just maintain order in the courtroom, rule on objections. You know, is this follow the rules of evidence? Is this process that we're doing? You know, is this the proper procedure? You know, and these type things. So they don't really decide the final question, guilty or not guilty. They just decide, you know, should this evidence be heard by the jury or not? So a lot of the things that they do actually takes place outside the hearing of the jury because they don't want the jury to be influenced. Sometimes that leaks out and the judge tells the jury, well, you know, pay no never mind to what you just heard, but, you know, let's face it, they're human, they heard it, it's going to affect them some way. A lot of cases too, though, even though the judge did not decide the case, the judge will sentence the defendant. So a lot of times judges will rule really harshly during the course of the case in favor of the prosecutor, which I think is really wrong and bad. And then at the end, and they'll slam the person into prison just because they think that's what the voters want. On the other hand, I've seen cases where judges were very fair, bend over backwards, give the defense every opportunity, but if the guy is still found guilty at the end, then slam him into prison. That might be a little bit more fair approach. But still in the end, I mean, I think that judges are overly, and have been for many years, you know, overly ready to put people in prison, and that's why we have so many people in prison today. And so it's hard to find that right balance and how to be a good judge and, you know, make the proper rulings and things like that. It's, you know, it's very tempting to rule against people because of their demeanor. I mean, I've had people in my court that I thought were arrogant and cocky, and you know, you're just really tempted to go after that person. So hopefully you kind of set all that aside, keep the emotions out of it, and just act as a professional and be objective. So hey, you know, those are some thoughts of mine on being a judge. Get up on here, do a little research on your own. Maybe you want to look into that Missouri plan and make some comments on some part of what I said, something you find in your book that you find is interesting. Look at the 3 questions. You know, how should judges approach rulings on evidence and so forth? Should they apply the intentions of the framers, or should they look at the questions involved in the case and just use the plain language of the laws and the rules involved? Or should they always follow precedent and, you know, what have the other cases always said in these situations? And so, you know, these are things that you can look at. Be sure to follow the rules and post on your discussion board, and hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at robdawalt@me.com. Thanks a lot. See you on down the line. Bye.